All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. And I figure why not start 5 minutes early? We were a little late in getting ready, and so let's go ahead and jump into this. First of all, I want you to know we are MythVision. And I am excited about today's show. We're going to talk about evolution. Of course, we're going to take your questions. If you guys want to shoot those questions in, super chats, cut the line. You help keep the lights on. So I got to at least allow that. First off, I want everyone to see that the gods are interested in me. I'm no longer seeking out the gods. Here's an eyewitness account for you. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys saw it. They're after me now. I've given up off chasing their ass, so now they're chasing me. And today, our special guest is Aron. Welcome back to the video, my friend.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. So before we began, you told me about your prior state 9 or 10 years ago. And I'm really interested to hear where you were, because I don't understand the people that are there now. So help me with that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point. So 9, 10 years ago, Kent Hovind was one of the guys I listened to try and defend young earth creationism. Even when I became a Presbyterian Calvinist from a regular like Calvary Chapel fundamentalist, we still believed the earth was really young, and they still teach that today in a lot of the more conservative versions of Christianity that might be like PCA. This was not a liberal Presbyterian. So when you hear Presbyterian, you usually think these are liberal Christians. The ones I was part of were kind of an offshoot of the Puritans. They legitimately listened to like all of the Protestant reformers who were all into, no music, extreme, what would you call that? Going to the next level of trying to just stick with the biblical text and hymns that are all ordinated from presbyters and whatnot. Long story short, I'm listening to Kent Hovind to try and defend the Bible. I used to say things like this. One person tried to diagnose me and said that you've got BPD or something, because I made the statement, and I did a video a long time ago. If the word of God said that Jonah swallowed a well, I would believe it.
And you said that yourself.
I said that myself. I filmed it, and I meant it. Even though it's not what the word of God says, right? As where I was coming from, I would have believed it is my point. Whatever the Bible says was true. And for whatever weird reason, we started with that presupposition. So everything has to. You can't. It's the weirdest thing. You cannot get outside of that. So other Christians try to tell us, no, you're misinterpreting it. And I think that they're doing so oftentimes in light of the science. God continues, or the Bible, its goalpost move oftentimes in light of evidence that we have now that's factually based. So it has to. It has to.
I've heard the claim that, that like there was a movie, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a movie talking about evangelicals and fundamentalists, wherein this one minister said that if the Bible said that 2 + 2 = 5, I would believe it. I wouldn't question that. I would find a way to believe it and move on. I don't understand that. So when the Bible says something wrong, you just tell yourself that it's right.
Right.
So when you see all the contradictions, you just say, those are not contradictions. Mm-hmm. They're not contradictions. And that's right. It. Then there's no, I don't get the priority of saying that, like in your video, it showed the Odyssey. Right. What here we have these book of old stories. And so you're going to tell yourself that book is true, mm-hmm. and it doesn't matter all the proof against it. You're going to believe the Odyssey. You're going to believe the Odyssey is absolute literal history.
Right.
I don't understand the logic behind that. Why?
Well, it's cognitive dissonance for sure, obviously. And it's like you have to use it to, I guess, a more contemporary point. Remember when the Capitol was raided recently? Okay. There are people who made that all out to be these radical, violent groups that are out here ready to destroy all these properties. And we have video evidence of a lot of rednecks showing up with their rebel flags and American Christian flags and whatnot, and their MAGA hats and all that.
And Dixie flags.
And no matter what, you cannot convince some of these people that no, these are just passionate, patriotic, right-wing extremists that were involved. You can't convince them. It doesn't matter, because even if you did point out,
maybe you think maybe it was all those people chanting "Hang Pence."
I mean, you get where I'm going with this, though. It's like there's no convincing people who are defending what they think is true or what they are raised to believe. If their parents teach them this, this is what you stand for. This is what you believe. And the Bible, even more so, because this is God. This is your whole existence is based off this. And when I was obsessed with it, you had to realize, let man be a liar. Even the text sets you up to fail like this. All men are liars. Let God be true and all men lie. Well, if
even the Bible says that, though. I mean,
right.
In Jeremiah 8:8, I mean, where I think that's the verse where it talks about how the scripture has been turned into a lie.
Oh, you're talking.
And God is not a man that he should lie, but he sends strong delusions. and he befuddles his own prophets so that his prophets lie. So he lies through the prophets because they're speaking for him, right? So God is not a man that he should lie. He gets all these other people to lie by deceiving them. Well, what's that? That's a lie.
Right.
So it's, I don't.
Oh, I'm not. I'm on your side. I'm saying, as a Christian, we found ways to cognitive dissonance. It's the literal definition. When you face evidence that's contrary to your conclusion, you literally bend, warp, twist, reevaluate, recalculate. If the end didn't happen, yeah, it's going to, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that you find to be a problem, you find a loophole. We've done this with the whole contradictions within the Gospels. Everything you find, there is an answer. And, Bart Ehrman said one time on the show, he said, Derek, if you want to bad enough, you can make anything harmonize, literally anything, if you try hard enough. And that's something that's just factual. So some people just start with that. What happened to me, that's a process. For me, how I went from that to where I am today, I used to not like you. I say that publicly for everyone to know. I hated your guts as a Christian. Now, I wouldn't use the term hate, but I literally had this animosity inside of me because you spoke against what was sacred to me. I did not like you. I didn't like Richard Dawkins. I didn't like any of these guys. I literally saw you guys as the enemy. And I believed that you guys were working for the devil. I believed that there was spirits or something. I don't know. I'm not kidding. I'm dead serious. I used to think this about you.
I used to be accused of being satanic even when I was Christian. I've just always been accused of being the devil ever since I was a kid. And I don't understand what it is that prompted that. I mean, I'm wearing an AC/DC t-shirt and I'm told that I'm going to go to hell for that, for example. And so that's the reason I never identified as Satanist, because it's just too obvious.
People will take that and interpret it. See, he said it. He subliminally said it.
I have a lot of respect for the Satanic Temple. Not so much the Church of Satan, but the Satanic Temple is at least doing good work in as far as defending for the First Amendment. I have to respect what they're able to do for that. My problem with the Church of Satan, they had a nice thing about the 7 commandments that were better than the 7 rules or guidelines or whatever the hell they called them. And they were better than the 10 commandments, but they still advocated for magic. And so I never identified as Satanist or with Satanists because I was more for reason and rationality. I was more science-minded. Now, I can't fault the Satanic Temple, the modern incarnation, is also science-minded. I mean, they're all atheists. Now, they don't believe that there's a Satan. They certainly don't worship a devil.
Right.
They don't worship anything. But as I said, to call myself that And I've often said that another reason I can't be satanic is because I'm not young and sexy enough, and I can't afford the wardrobe.
You know, I wouldn't even have been able to have this conversation at all 10 years ago. This is like you just talking about the Church of Satan would have had my skin crawling. Like there was some potential. The power in the tongue. What are you doing? You know, like weird shit. Hey, I got a super chat. I want to get a super chat, and I want to chip away at these super chats as we go. Feel free to ask questions and hang out. We're gonna get into evolution, of course, and its impact. But Zagros, thank you so much, man. You always come through. He says, hello, Derek and Aron. Do you guys think rational scientific thinking could, in the long run, become like a selective pressure that would slowly take out religious superstitious tendencies out of the gene pool?
We're seeing that in action, aren't we?
Hmm.
With the anti-maskers, the anti-vaxxers. We're seeing all these. We're seeing dozens of people that are strong online activists against masks and vaccines dying. And then now there's this growing list of all these people that were famous on the internet that already had famous ministries or whatever, but they're using their platform to argue against, to say that COVID doesn't exist, or to say that the vaccine was invented by Bill Gates to decimate the human population. And I don't know how you're going to take the population down to 1/10 of what it was when the mortality rate from this disease is already 1%. Right. Not 90. But there's not a lot of reason that goes into this. Look at what Dennis Prager just did. Dennis Prager refused to get the vaccine because he heard that if you get natural COVID, then you get a super immunity. Now, I thought it was a combination of getting the vaccine and the disease, but he just wanted to get the disease because he thought that would give him a natural immunity. And then his plan was, and how stupid is that, to get the disease so that you're immune to disease? That's idiotic. What he doesn't understand is the susceptibility that when you get the disease, you're more likely to get it again. It's like pneumonia, all right? So now you've actually gotten a sensitivity instead of an immunity, because there's a lot of people that are getting this over and over again. So that's another thing to be concerned about. But then he says that he's going to get the monoclonal antibody treatment, which means he's not going to have a natural immunity. So he's just taking the huge risk. And what are the side effects for this? Psychosis is one, but we wouldn't notice it in him unnecessarily. But then we also have kidney problems go along with it. There's other potential side effects. I wish they would just advertise it that impotence is a potential side effect, and people would finally start putting the damn masks on. But look at the way that they're not using any kind of sense. They don't understand how diseases work. They don't understand how evolution works. They don't understand why we have a new variant in South Africa and a new variant in Brazil and a new variant in India. Where are these new variants coming from? That's evolution, baby. That's where the Delta came from. That's why we have this one that goes past vaccines. Although fortunately, the one that slides right through the vaccinated, that one has been eradicated by isolation. Fortunately, because we would be at square one if that one had gotten loose.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott Duke says, don't you think Aron looks more like Ming the Merciless than the devil?
Yeah, I get all the time that you look like Satan. Really? Show me a picture.
Yeah. red two-horned, or you can get the show, which the show is kind of funny. If you ever saw that Lucifer show, if there you go with the term equating Satan with Lucifer. So let's jump right into this. This is something that I used to, it's only in the past 3 or 4 years I've actually taken evolution serious. I was, like I said, a Kent Hovind listener 10 years ago. And even when I started to deconvert, I still didn't know jack squat. I'm still learning a lot about this, but I've been in contact with a lot of scientists and stuff. And I realized, man, this makes the most sense out of everything that I've ever thought.
Indulge me for a moment. I want to hear your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So from a fundamentalist Christian, and what ended up being the cause of me deconverting and going from there.
Yeah, and just a little bit of the progression there. Yes.
Okay. So I was born. It's good to know who raised me. You know what I mean? So, my mother is a right-wing, hardcore redneck from Florida in the sticks. She was in a snake-handling Pentecostal church growing up. Okay. My father was a Yankee, but he went military special forces really quick. So he kind of turned into a Southern Yankee, if that makes sense. And him and my mom had me, and I was raised to go to church occasionally, to go eat at a buffet, all you can eat with mom. And I didn't give a crap about it. But my father being an alcoholic, dealt with a lot of trauma growing up, started to take Jesus kind of serious when I went to a private school, and they started to emotionally prime me into convincing to accept the Lord in my heart as Lord and Savior, to help be that father I never had. And I felt that. I felt some type of experience, which I now realize that after being a drug addict for many years, and I'm skipping a lot of information here to point out, you can have even far more experiences just by doing drugs than you can by asking Jesus into your heart. But either way.
And there's a strong correlation between drug use and spirituality.
Yep. 100%. All in the brain, the whole nine. Like, there's so much. And then sociologically, there's so many things I'm learning about this. But I'm going to cut through and just say I was very into Christianity as a fundamentalist. I went to Calvary Chapel. I spoke in tongues and cast out demons. I did the whole nine as a fundamentalist Christian, was really into that bubble. And I wanted to get more serious about the Bible. So I went to this college called Carolina Bible College here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. As I went to this college, I started to learn more, but it was more about reading books that taught me more than this little college, because it's a Baptist college. And I'm debating these professors. I became a Calvinist. Why? Because the text seems to indicate, and Paul seems to say in Romans 9 very clearly, God does whatever the hell he wants. Shut up, you're clay, and accept it. And I wanted to tell other Christians, this is what this book is teaching. And
Have you noticed the Quran says much the same?
I've heard, and I've been learning more as I've been reading the Quran, which is why I want to do an episode with you at some point where we talk about our experience as we've been researching into this. So you've done a lot for a while now, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you on that. But I just, cutting through it, is my drug addiction played a significant role in my deconversion, because I kept wondering why I was struggling with a scientific actual illness, not a spiritual deviancy of morality that it's some spirits trying to control me. But I realized I'm sick. I started to find out I'm sick. I really need help. So I ended up getting help. And now I'm 6 years off heroin. I was injecting heroin at the end. But when it came to the end of my run on my drug addiction, I almost died. When you're facing death, you're willing to do almost anything if you want to survive bad enough. So
today is the birthday for one of my best friends in my life. And he died of heroin.
Oh, wow.
4 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
It's just, yeah. And you said you were injecting heroin toward the end, and as was he.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I could have gone as well. And I'm one of the lucky ones who was able to do what was necessary to get clean. Mr. Monster, I'm gonna get your super chat. Don't worry, my friend, I promise. So as I'm getting clean, I'm realizing maybe I don't have all the answers. And I'm on YouTube. I'm just investigating ideas. And I must admit, I came across that show, Zeitgeist. The one that teaches that Jesus is like Horus, is like this, is like that. Now, I don't know jack squat at the time. I don't know that there's maybe some inaccuracies that are pointed out in here, but it was the general premise that really broke the ice for me to say, is really Jesus better? I mean, who do I think I am to tell Buddhists they're foolish and I'm right? How can I stand here and be that? My ego had to deflate because I was dying of addiction. Who the hell am I? I don't even know how to live my own life. How am I going to stand around and tell others, like I've been telling for the past 5-10 years, Jesus is the truth and you're wrong and you're going to go to hell, and I can't even keep my own life in order?
Interesting thing about Zeitgeist, that was in 3 parts, if I remember correctly. There were one part was talking about the Fed, if I remember right, and another part was talking about 9/11 conspiracy stuff.
Right.
And then there was the Jesus thing. And they're all wild claims, but you would have to have some direct knowledge of all of these areas in order to speak intelligently against them. You can't just decide that you don't believe that. And what I see with a lot of believers is that if they see one thing that they dislike, or one thing maybe that they think they can disprove, or one thing that science can't understand or explain, then that's the thing that topples all of the rest. But I understand that one person could be completely right about this and absolutely wrong about both of these other things.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be an absolute. You can, at each of these statements that he's making, some truth is in there, assuredly, right? But how much? And the thing that saved me with Zeitgeist was that I knew enough that regarding the thing about Jesus, that I realized that there's very little about this that I can verify myself.
Right.
And then when he made the statement about Jesus being the Son of God, meaning S-U-N, I remember that was the stupidest thing said there. That and that caused me to think, okay, well, at least the whole rest of it is questionable. Then, I can't disprove it off this one thing, but it does lead me to worry, because he had DM Murdoch as an
Right.
advisor, and he made that statement, and suddenly DM Murdoch she's lost her credibility because she was the go-to on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a chance to interview her later, and I brought up that exact point. I mean, how can you be the expert that he's consulting with,
Is
and
that
yet he
interview
says
on your
this?
channel?
Yes.
I need to
And,
check that out.
and DM Murdoch says, well, I didn't tell him to say that. That's something he pulled out of his ass and threw.
That's one of the things I heard. Yeah, there were some things he did on his own, and there were some things that she may have had influence on. But at the end of the day, it was enough, a catalyst, even if it wasn't 100% accurate, to get me to think, put Jesus on the same level and the same playing field as these other prophets and other deities in history, which made me start to kind of go, I don't know Jack. There's so much I don't know. I need to learn. That made my God picture. It was like the 6 wise men. I always mention this. The 6 wise men who go to see the elephant, and they're all blind. For me, it was like God was in all cultures at this moment. And she, whatever, was kind of revealing itself in all these cultures. So I kind of became somewhat of a pantheist in a way.
I think pantheist is a worship of nature. And I think the word you're talking about there is henotheism, I think.
Well, the reason why I said
all encompassing, where you believe that all the religions have at least a basis in truth.
The problem,
I held that same position once as a kid.
I think that I think I was more like a pantheist because with that Zeitgeist movie, it makes it agricultural. So like all of these gods are pictures of the dying season and the rising and the sun going into the winter solstice. And I thought nature itself is that reflection of the God. So the God thing became bigger and not this little narrow, I am the way, the truth, the life, and no one can get to the Father except in my bubble. So God became bigger. And then eventually I started to look into science. I actually started to consider like what scientists are saying. And I wanted to understand my brain with addiction. So as I started to learn about my brain and how we work, what addiction is, what's going on in my mind, that ended up causing me to go to a place where I ended up saying, okay, hold up. This has a natural phenomena. I can explain this. This has it's not superstitious. It made better sense. And I started to use that methodology more as time went on. And it went from, well, hold on. What's the difference between pantheism, deism, atheism at this point? And it gradually became, well, one says he created and disappeared. We have no way to validate that. We just look around and we say, look at fine tuning or whatever our argument might be to try and prove it. The other
way to put that would be the deistic position, at least in the case of the founding fathers who were pre-Darwinian,
right,
is we don't have an explanation for where everything comes from, but we don't see any evidence of God working at anything now.
Right.
So maybe God was here, but he clearly left.
And that's pretty much what I was like, what's the difference? I mean, the only thing is that existence is here, right? We are experiencing things. So that was the only thing I had, but I started to go, well, hold on. How do I even know there is a God? When you actually are sincerely asking that question, that's when you can look and really start to go, okay, hold on. God was nature, but then all of a sudden nature was just nature. So then it was like, hold on, what's the difference between it? At the end of the day, it just became more naturalistic. And that's where I'm at today. I'm a naturalist. I don't believe in a God. I don't need one. You're going to have to prove that there is one to convince me. And they're like, well, what would it take? And I'm like, well, God would know what that would take. And
my answer for that is that I'll take anything that qualifies as evidence. Any body of objectively verifiable facts that are positively indicative of and or exclusively concordant with that one position or hypothesis over any other. And I think that's the most open-ended invitation I can give. And yet I still don't get nobody even makes an attempt to fill that. I'm just told that you have to believe it because you want to believe it. And the interesting thing is I've talked to a number of former atheists, and a lot of people pretend that they were once atheists and that they suddenly had a conversion moment. But I've talked to a handful that we can verify were actually atheist activists at one point, and then jump back into religion. And the excuses they give for why they've adopted belief are even worse than the people that never questioned their faith in the first place. In one case, I'm talking to somebody who's an accredited scientist. He teaches evolution, but he adopted Christianity. Why? Because he misunderstood something about physics. I mean, he looked at the observer aspect, or I can't remember what it was. But you know, so if the observation changes, it means it requires a mind. But it doesn't matter what the observer is; it can be a camera, and the same effect happens. So it's the recording of the thing. So it has nothing to do with a mind. But this guy jumps straight from the possibility, from what he should have assumed in his misunderstanding. He should have assumed maybe there's a possibility of something we might call a god in the feebleness of our understanding. But he jumped right to Christianity. How?
Because it sounds like there's more to the story, to be honest with you. But
yeah, well, he admitted to me in our interview that he believes because he wants to.
Right.
That's it. He just wants to believe.
Right.
Okay. So there's a thing we mentioned before about the drugs and the correlation with belief. I mean, there's a strong correlation with the type of endorphins and oxytocin or whatever that you get from literally pretending that there's someone listening to you when you're alone.
So that's why the role playing with me and my wife in the bedroom always is more fun. Whoa, this makes sense. Hey, Mr. Monster, thanks for the super chat. He says, when great minds collide. But seriously, can you hear me? All right. There we go. But seriously, you guys inspire me. My first question for Aron Ra, what you know and what is your opinion on human evolution with viruses in our DNA?
I know that some of the ERVs have been traced back to commonality with other apes. So that, there's a point in our genome where it's the same point in a gorilla genome, the same point in a chimpanzee genome, where we have indication of a common infection, that our common ancestor had this infection at this time, and that the descendants inherited that. An endogenous retrovirus is where you survive an infection, but the virus has written your DNA. Because that's what viruses do. They insert their own DNA. Some viruses have only RNA, but others do have DNA. And the virus inserts its own genetic code into your coding. And since only 5% of your DNA is actually coding, and like 15% is regulatory, I think. I'd have to go check the numbers, but I know it's not more than that. That all of the rest of it is more safe to change, if you will. So I mean, we've got all kinds of duplications and all kinds of gobbledygook in there, and copies of copies, and a buggy enzymatic process, and all of this that affect the rest of our genome. And then a lot of that has endogenous retroviruses in it, just as an example. And there are some ERVs that trace back to a commonality with other old world monkeys outside of apes too. So here's another indication of the same part of the genome. And when I say same part, because it can change, you can have huge blocks of DNA that are duplicated. But when you realize that, okay, this is an exact duplicate of this. So if you remove that duplication, then you have a commonality again. Now we have a structure that makes sense. And so it still ends up being in the same place when all of these alterations are taken into consideration. So we share a number of ERVs with other monkeys, with other apes, and that's just one of many indications that we had a commonality.
And there's so many too. You go and do. Thank you for that super chat, Mr. Monster. Indo, thank you. You both have cool shirts, he said. What does yours say exactly?
In no God we trust.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
do you sell merch?
I have some T-shirts and such that are available at evolvefish.com, and if you search ARONRA, then you'll get to my stuff.
Okay.
But I don't sell anything directly.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I didn't even bring that up. I might as well let people know. Be sure, I've got the Patreon, as you know. I'm going to do some stuff on the Shroud of Turin. I've got some scholarship on that. Aron has one too. Please consider going and checking him out and joining his Patreon. This is how he keeps doing what he does.
I got to say something about that since you brought it up, if you don't mind.
Please.
I was working in a corporate office for many years at a job that I absolutely hated. If you ever saw the movie The Incredibles, you see Mr. Incredible working in that cubicle, in that cube farm. That was my job. It was literally doing the same thing he was. The only difference is the little old lady's not in the cubicle with me. She's on a phone, right? But otherwise, that was the job that I had. And I did the foundational falsehoods of creationism. The whole most of my series back in the old day was done at this job. You know, while I'm doing my work, I'm also working on my channel. But in the last year or two, they inhibited everything that I was doing. So they monitor my screen all the time. I can't jump off I can't take a call and just go through the routine and also do my own stuff at the same time. So for that last year, I wasn't able to do anything, nothing at all with my channel. I would do the half-hour drive home. I have maybe 2 hours before I have to have dinner, deal with the kids, go to bed, and then go back to the. So it was impossible to do anything. So it was absolutely necessary for me to be an activist at all. I had to have a way of supporting myself doing this, and fortunately, that happened. So, I mean, I found out I was about to lose my job. I'm like, oh, what the hell am I going to do? Because I had that argument with my boss, where he calls me into the office and he's angry that I'm going around the world giving speeches on atheism when he's a diehard Christian.
Oh, wow.
And we got into a heated argument over that. And so bad that I actually got a written apology from the man. But the fact that I got that written apology also was kind of a clue that I ain't going to be here in 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my nice way of making amends so that I can fire you, pretty much.
Yeah, and there were other indications quickly thereafter. I was going to be moved to a new department that I didn't want anything to do with. I was suddenly being evaluated for things that were never metrics before, and just the way that things had been set up, I can't meet these goals. They made me sign a document that if I don't meet these goals, then I'm out. And then they set me up for training classes so that it's not possible. Okay, you're just gonna. Why don't you just boot me out the door? And so I was a little worried. And I had to set up a Patreon. I didn't know that Patreon existed until about that moment. Somebody made the suggestion, and I was able to support myself outside of that job, and consequently, I now make content, the way I'm supposed to. I can actually do the research involved, and I pay it back as much as I can. I mean, I try to be the hardest working atheist activist that it is possible for me to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I very much appreciate that I get to do what I love for a living. And I really do need all the help I can get because it's a struggle.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. People know who watch my channel. I'm always pumping my Patreon to let people know. The way I leverage it is I give them early access to everything. I mean, but what you do with your series, the lies in the textbook, I mean, you took my old buddy and my old buddy Ken Hovind and just tore him up over and over and over. And I was like, all right, that's it. The 11th one is done, right? No. And another one. And I'm like, dude, how many times can you bury someone, pull up the corpse and bury them again before their bones just decompose? I mean, seriously, though, you really buried him with a lot of information. You dealt with anything. Like, I used to fall for the trap of like, there's a tree that's going through multiple layers in the ground. And it's like, no, this is evidence of the flood and that, the sediment, they say these are millions of years. If you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you debunked that whole thing in such an eloquent way. I was like, damn, this is good. This is really, really good. Go support Aron, please. If you guys do, I know this is in the middle of the video. We haven't even started on evolution ultimately yet, but I ask you guys, please, I've been working with them as well. We're kind of in a friendly competition. I'll get people to sign up for Bart Ehrman as well. But at the end of the day, we want to team up, educate people, help free them from the minds that they are worthless dung and their righteousness is filthy rags before an non-existent deity that is in their minds. It's in this social construct of their minds. So as you all know, we want to look at the myth. We want to break it down. He's taken the scientific angle. I see that he puts the patrons' names at the end of the film. I mean, you guys can be, you can be a participant and help out with that. So also the YouTube channel. He just came out with this little video right here. You see, starting a whole nother debunking series. Your playlist right here, I think, is it in the playlist? The lies in the textbook? Or where's that?
The lies in the textbook is the one dealing with Kent Hovind. The one that I just started only has 3 videos on it so far.
Okay.
But it will be at least 30.
Wow. This is going to be and I feel like now you're just beginning. You've only been doing it technically like you want to do it just recently. So I can't imagine where this is going to go. Then of course, sign up for Bart Ehrman. Sign up for the Bart Ehrman webinar. That's going to be on the 7th. And we're both going to be present there. So back to the chat here, a couple super chats, then we'll get started in evolution if you're cool with that.
Sure.
All right. Let's scroll up here. Make sure I'm missing this. Kirk gave a super chat. Thank you, Kirk. I appreciate the love, my friend. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Please forgive me if I did. Indo says, thoughts on the arguments that most mutations are deleterious, and now new information can't be made through mutations.
All new information is made by mutations. Your college level textbook will say so, sometimes explicitly. I mean, all variation comes from mutation. Essentially, there is. I want to say a caveat that some variation can come from another source. I'm trying to remember what it is, but unless it's what is it? I can't remember the other term. But in general, all genetic mutation or genetic variation is all mutation. So all new variants. So like the Pekingese. Where did the Pekingese come from? We know that dogs were derived from wolves. Right. And so we have a huge variety of hundreds of different breeds recognized by the American Kennel Club and others. And where specifically did the Pekingese come from? So we had somebody, a Chinese empress, got to see a birth defect puppy that looked an awful lot like the Chinese rendering of a lion. Now, the Chinese don't have a lot of lions in China. So their depiction of lions is a little bit artistic, shall we say. And if you'll notice, Chinese sculptures of lions tend to look more like Pekingese than they do like lions. And so she's looking at this Pekingese and she thinks it looks like a lion. So she ordered that Pekingese be bred with others with other dogs of similar type until they get that same mutation to become recurrent and stable. So now we have a stable breed, Pekingese from Peking. Right. So now the Empress Sushi, I think it was. So this is where this comes from. This is all variety comes from mutation. This is how you get from you derive from Asiatic wolves. You get something that is like a hound, and then you get specifically a bloodhound, and then a basset hound. So you've got it elongated and lowered on shorter legs, and now you've got a dachshund. Right. So you just make these transitions to this sort of thing. And that's it. It's a fundamental aspect of agriculture. We've been using evolution worldwide throughout human history in how we've cultivated all these, almost all of our crops and all of our livestock. So it would make practical sense to understand how evolution works. So then they have to come up with some excuse. Well, that's just microevolution. But if you really understood microevolution, then that's the whole thing, really. And they will argue that mutations can't be the source of this new information. Well, where the hell do you think it comes from then? Well, it was already written into the gene code. It's not a code. I mean, it does coding, but it's not a code because it's not an intelligently, DNA is not intelligently designed, and geneticists will be the first to tell you that. No, this is a haphazard mess. You know, I learned, one of my teachers was a geneticist on the Human Genome Project. She was working with Francis Collins. He was a director of that project. She's mentioned in science journals for her contribution to that. She's also a Christian. And she's explaining to me from a Christian perspective about how she understands that genetics is proof of evolution, and it's undeniable that the Adam and Eve thing. Francis Collins, by the way, says the same thing. He's director of our National Institutes of Health right now. He's an evangelical Christian, but he says that Adam and Eve, not possible. The flood didn't happen. It's not just a matter of belief. We know it didn't happen. Adam and Eve is not. It doesn't fit the evidence. It's not that humanity evolved from primate ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago from a population of minimal 10,000 people. And people aren't going to understand that, but because they think that there's a handful of apes that suddenly give birth to a human baby.
Yeah.
But it's not quite like that.
and it's almost like that. The ridiculous thing I used to listen to was it's like a tornado running through through a junkyard and turning into a Boeing 747 or whatever the plan. And I'm thinking they act like, I mean, maybe that'd be the case if from nothing to what we are right now, fully complex in the way that we are, sure. But nobody's making that claim except creationists, technically. And
Fred Hoyle came up with the tornado with a junkyard thing that you're talking about. He was an astrophysicist, I think. But his problem was that he had no concept of evolution, so he's speaking completely out of his field. And even though he identified as an atheist, he was kind of a creationist. He believed that hydrogen was constantly being created. He's trying to account for Big Bang. He's trying to maintain the concept of a steady state universe by saying that hydrogen is just created out of nothing. And so he believes in millions of micro creation events, but he also believed in intelligent design. So how can you call yourself atheist if you believe there's an intelligent designer and that all of this happened on purpose? And he's doing this because he doesn't understand fuck all about evolution at all. He said that that Archaeopteryx was a Compsognathus fossil, that it was just a dinosaur fossil that had feathers glued onto it. So, and Fred Hoyle is the atheist who understands the evidence for Christianity according to the creationists, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He understood fucking nothing.
Wow.
And it is funny that you look at pictures of the guy, and he is a comical looking sort of guy, but it's funny that if you look at a picture of him, you can just see, just looking at the photo, yeah, this guy's not this guy's not competent.
M. Doug, thank you for the super chat. He says, Maestro, are the markers for blonde hair in 4 different unrelated locations around the world that led to the myth that sailors were getting around?
I don't know anything about that. I barely know about ginger, but I know that there's more specific genetics for ginger. It might be that blonde hair comes from multiple sources. But we do have Southern Africans that are and have been occasionally blonde, and blue eyes. Blue eyes has occurred naturally in China and in Africa without any indication of interbreeding with blue-eyed people. It's just something that can occur and sometimes does.
Thank you so much. Kirk says, and thanks for the super chat, did ancient viruses cause egg-laying monotremes? Am I saying that? Monotremes? To start giving live birth? If not, what was the catalyst? Love your work, Aron and Derek. Thank you, Kirk.
Going from oviparous to viviparous reproduction is surprisingly easy at some stages. We have like skinks in Australia, where one single species on the coast gives birth live, while the mountain variety of that same interbreeding species lays eggs, or maybe I have them the other way around. But there's a few that can alternate between eggs and live birth, and it's just the difference really is just a matter of whether there's a shell. If you look at monotremes give birth to a fetus that is sorely undeveloped, and marsupials do as well. So marsupials would be stereotypically the next level from that, where they just lost the shell in the egg, so the egg technically hatches while it's still inside, and then you have to care for it while it's still inside. And then what happened with the placentalia, the placental mammal, not just mammals with placenta, but placentalia is a subset of therians. Then you have where the baby is more developed inside the womb. It's still not developed enough, but it's more developed so that in some species at least, it can come out and start walking within a few hours.
Wow.
Not us. The reason we don't is because we have this slight difference with the other apes, in that our brains have grown so ridiculously large that we have to continue the development outside the womb, or else our heads will be too big to be born at all. So we have to be born utterly stupid and helpless.
We take care of our youngin'.
Yeah.
So we got Sandman Light. He says, I am encountering more people online that are attempting to throw doubt on the peer review process and its biases. How would you address this?
The peer review process is the countermeasure for biases. I mean, religion is a bias by definition. That's exactly what religion is. But the scientific methodology seeks to minimize or eliminate bias however it can. And one of those ways is the peer review process. We don't take your word for shit. Mm-hmm. And you can tell me, well, I had this experience where I saw this light. Well, that's fine. Can you prove it? Show me. Oh, you can't prove it? Picture it didn't happen. And I'm not saying that necessarily it didn't happen, but there's no proof that it did. So we can't say that it did.
Right.
We can say that it did when we can show that it did. So that's part of it. All claims have to be based on indicative evidence. You have to have demonstrable, objectively verifiable evidence. It can't be, well, they did a study. Who's they? How come the creationists never identify who the study was? So we can go look it up. I like doing written debates as opposed to live debates, because whenever the creationist cites a scientific paper, in a written debate, you have an option to read it before you reply to it. And invariably, every time they cite a scientific paper that says blank, you read it and realize it don't say that. Sometimes it says the opposite of that. Sometimes it says something completely different from that, but it didn't say that.
I've actually heard you on your show talk about this on your channel, and it's interesting and then sometimes I pluck things completely out of context to utilize it, and it's like, no, read the chapter after and you'll find out, or whatever.
What was the next fucking sentence after that?
Yeah, you didn't like mid-sentence, you didn't even finish a sentence. Stop Scamming Man, what's up? Thank you so much for the super chat. Folk like Sabor, Subboor act.
Sabor Ahmad.
Sabor act like homoplasy is a dirty secret of Darwinist. Yet when I read Darwin's, he happily gives readers excellent examples of homoplasy. And
the guy was in a live debate with me. Another reason I don't like live debates, he brought this up, and I had to blank for a moment. He says, well, how come you didn't mention homoplasy? And I had to ask him, the fuck are you talking about? And when he explains it, because that wasn't a term that I bothered to use. Now, this was years ago. But I was like, so what you did was you didn't read the book like you said that you did. In fact, what you did was do Control F, looking for that word. And so because I didn't use that word, you missed the two places where I really did talk about it. Just so you can say that I didn't.
Interesting. And he also has reptiles becoming mammals, just microevolution. I suspect he's responding to someone in the chat. Thank you for that super chat. Stop Scamming Man. I just want to make sure I'm caught up here. So the question I have, since I think we're caught up. Yeah, we are. My question is this. When I was listening to the debates between Richard Dawkins many years ago and what is it? John C. Lennox, the mathematician, and other apologists who make it sound like this is the best position and it's Jesus, at the end of the day, that's really what they're trying to sell you on. They want to get you in the door with a theism of some sort, and then really jump to the resurrection actually happened. But at the end of the day, what do you think, if you don't mind breaking this down, the impact of evolution, and I don't mean it in the Kent Hovind sense, where he doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the idea that we did come from previous species over a very long period of time, the transition is so micro that if we went back at any point in period of time, like someone said, they asked me the question, Derek, if you could go back in the 4.5 billion years of the planet, what would you want to see at any point in history? And I was like, well, what if I could witness abiogenesis happen? No, that would be like saying, let's fast forward, like, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of years maybe to see this process take place of whatever that might be. But the point is, I would love to see how that happened and what did take place in what kind of circumstance, environment, etc. Now, I say that to say evolution. What kind of impact has this had on religion based on your experience?
First of all, I want to mention, if you wanted to go see, if you could go see abiogenesis, there are dozens, plural, of intermediate steps within that process. So it wouldn't be possible, even with a time machine, to see that. It'd be like when you want to go see the first person ever born. What was the first human being? You can't. For the same reason that with that same time machine, you couldn't go back to Italy and find the first person who spoke Italian living amongst Latin-speaking people, because it's a population level change and it is very gradual. There's tons of people that speak Italian now, and tons of people that speak Spanish and French and Romanian, and they all spoke Latin at one point. But the transition is so slow and on a population-wide level that you can't identify that first Spaniard, that first Frenchman, that first Italian. Yeah. So what is the effect of evolution on people? Well, here's the thing. They say they want to argue for belief in God. But if they're using a deistic argument, or they're trying to just argue for like the universe being a god or something like that, okay, well that's one argument. But then you jump several steps beyond too far to assume Christianity. And even if there was a God, and even if there was the Christian God somehow, I mean, if there was a God, it wouldn't be deistic. Christianity makes no fucking sense. And I know a whole lot of people believe in Christianity, and I'm not going to say that they haven't thought about it, but that's what I think. I think they haven't thought about it because it makes no sense. It's nothing but contradictions. It's absolutely pointless. If God was the intelligent being that they make it out to be, Christianity would not be his device. It's ludicrous. I mean, the whole concept of hell for people who don't believe. No, we're not going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
So if there was a God, and under no circumstances, if there was a God and there was Jesus, if there was really a God who spoke through Jesus, the Bible would still be wrong. The Bible's wrong. That's it. But the thing is that not all of the arguments that these people come up with, all of the counter arguments against science, everything that they want to say, they want to pretend so desperately that scientists don't know what they know, so that they can pretend that they know what they don't know.
Right.
That's what the whole thing is about. But they're trying to defend the Bible. Sorry. Even if God was real, the Bible's still wrong. Not even the existence of God could change that.
Right. Yeah, no. There's so, like, what you're saying is factual, no matter how much Otangelo doesn't think so. You get people in the chat that think you're full of it, but obviously they're probably coming from theism or some form of that.
I don't know what Otangelo's problem is, but I just suspect it's chemical.
Flip Flopsky says, off topic, maybe another video, but I'd love to hear Aron talk about the volcano god on MythVision. Can you give 60 seconds to it at least, just to briefly, while we continue on evolution?
Well, God is seen as, in places, he's a mountain. He's a burning bush. Why would there be a burning bush that burns but is not consumed? Some interpretations are that it's a particular type of volcanic plume that is not a large scale thing. It's a very, and I've got a picture of it on one of my blog posts. It looks a bit like a bush, but it's just a plume of fire that comes out of the ground from a volcanic activity. Then God is a cloud. God is lightning and tornadoes and all of it. Yes, these are associated with volcanoes. Exodus screams volcano. The river of blood, the fire and brimstone coming down from the sky, the days of total darkness, all of that shit. Just right up to and including the plagues, some of them. And when we have where we're going to, God is going to lead them. And so they come out of Egypt and they're going to follow what is a column of smoke by day and a column of fire by night. It's a fucking volcano.
Yeah, it does sound. Yeah, there's a lot there too.
There are several dozen places throughout the Old Testament where God is described in terms that fit a volcano, that this is what they're talking about. And it turns out that just outside of, oh man, I wish I could remember the geography of it. I saw like a chain of volcanoes on this map that are all talk about where these biblical locations are, is a volcanic chain. And it's not like directly in Ramses or Cairo or anything like that, but it's not in Saudi Arabia either. I wish I should have saved that. But this is obviously what they're talking about. And what would be more godlike? What would to make the earth move and the awesome voice of God and the fire and brimstone, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, all of that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turned into a pillar of salt. That's not quite what I would describe it as, but yeah, pyroclastic cloud can that kind of shit.
It's that, or it's complete myth, and there might be a kernel to it, like you're talking about. And they're looking at certain natural phenomena and trying to describe it. They do that with clouds. You see a cloud the shape of a face, so you can say, "Oh, that's God." Look, see, you're looking at it, and you're assuming agency and things that it's really just your mind that's creating it. We have built into our brains. I just did an interview yesterday with Michael Shermer, with my buddy from Gnostic Informant. We were talking about that. In the brains, you have a fake face recognition, if you can say it. It's literally built into us to recognize faces, to recognize these things as part of evolution, as part of our way of survival. So
yeah. No, so the thing about Exodus, when it makes references to volcanoes, is that people had obviously experienced volcanoes and wrote them into their mythology. And the character that we now call Moses was evidently a compilation of other characters. And so the truth of that story, if there is any, is that somebody else happened across a volcano and believed it was God. And then, the stories get corrupted and other heroes' accounts, tales that happened with other people get collaborated into one. Because, and this happened a lot, where there would be some Joe Schmo did this really amazing thing, but nobody's interested in some unheard of Joe Schmo. We're all interested in Solomon. Solomon's famous. So why don't we say that Solomon did this thing, and then we can add it to Solomon's story, and then he's just more famous, because nobody's going to care about who Joe Schmo is.
Right.
So that's how that happens. So that's why all of these people have all of these superhero adventures, all of them. Like Jesus has 16 different gospels that didn't make it into the Bible, all these things that Jesus is supposed to have done. And Jesus still can't compete with Krishna, by the way. Krishna has a whole comic book series for what, all the defeats and endeavors that he did. A huge series of adventures. Krishna is more like Doctor Who or James Bond. He has all these different incarnations over the decades.
I do know that and we're getting off topic, but I do know that they did, it seems, competed with the surrounding Greco-Roman cultural deities like Dionysus, and they made Jesus do a little bit more. He was shown to be more merciful. They did things on purpose to try and make him look better than some of these gods. But I got a good question from my friend Steven over here with 666 on the payment here for the super chat. Are there legitimate challenges to the out of Africa theory? How did skin tones get lighter in non-African populations, i.e. vitamin D deficiency?
The brown is our common tone. So my pallor comes from one type mutation, and super dark skin comes from a different one, and it comes from a different one in different places. So people in Sri Lanka will also have dark skin, super dark skin, what we would call black, but their mutation that gave them that black skin is different than what some like Congolese people have for their black skin. Across Africa, you have a wide range of skin tones, and I'm not just talking about the Dutch immigrants that settled South Africa. I'm talking about in the indigenous population. You have a wide range of skin tones, including people who are more red than what we used to call the red man. So I mean, there's a wide color palette just in Africa, because Africa is the oldest population, so it is the most diverse. Genetically and culturally, there's a whole lot more going on in Africa than what we white people in the West generally recognize.
Yeah, we definitely don't pay enough attention. So thank you for that question. Did I answer that completely? The out of Africa theory? Are there any legitimate challenges?
A challenge to the out of Africa theory. It depends on which news article you read, because when people write news, they have to sell it. So every new discovery has to make scientists rethink their theories. Every headline has to give that kind of sensationalist crap to it. So they found a pre-human hominid, which I forget what the species name is, but it was in Europe. And so there are a number of dryopiths that were already known across Europe, including some that are exclusively bipedal. And these are before, not just humans, they're before gorillas and chimpanzees. So I mean, before orangutans, you have these dryopiths. So it's not surprising. Grecopithecus, for example, is one that was found in Greece. It's not surprising that you would find a ape that is, pre-human, that is in, Greece or what have you. Okay, so there's a bunch of them already there. Mm-hmm. But the people who make the story will say, well, this proves that humans came out of Europe. Well, no, we have all of this evidence that has us coming out of Africa. We don't just have this one thing. We have all of this shit that has us from. You can't point it to a dryopith. So what? There's plenty of dryopiths in Europe, but we didn't come from Europe. All of our ancestors are found in Africa.
And what do you think? Do you personally interpret negative motivations for why they want to put us in Europe instead
Oh
of Africa?
yeah, and isn't it obvious why?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm into the debate with this one guy, which we brought up twice without naming him so far today. Pastor Bob Enyart was going to Denver Bible Church, and he ran a Real Science Friday kind of thing until he was sued by Science Friday for using their name. He was an anti-vaxxer, anti-masker, COVID is a hoax kind of guy, but he died. He caught COVID and died of it. So yeah, so that's how we mentioned him earlier. I got into a debate with him. He's one of those people that brought up all of these things that these scientific papers said, that when you read them, you realize they don't really say that at all. And one of the things that he cited was the study that had a range. What was the slowest this mutation rate could be? What is the fastest rate this mutation could be? And of course, what the actual fact would be somewhere in the middle, right? And somewhere probably dead in the middle. But he takes the absolute fastest range, which would put what he wants to call Adam and Eve, mitochondrial Eve, would put her at 6,000 years old. The same study that he cited also confirms out of Africa. But Pastor Bob Enyart will not admit that. He won't admit the ways that it was coordinated, all these genomes combined to trace to an African ancestry. No, he will cite that story because it says 6,000 years and then ignore everything that got there, because that points to Africa, and he can't accept that he ever came from Africans.
I gotta say, as much as I was a fundamentalist raised, I don't get that mindset of that. You know, I was definitely defending the Bible, trying to keep the earth young and the whole nine, you know, but the whole race thing, I don't get it. But I hear that plays a significant role in this whole out of Africa theories that compete and stuff. And
it definitely does.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. Like, I don't get it. It's just weird to me. But then again,
there was a group of Chinese that were insistent that they had evolved separately from Homo erectus from other people, that they were polyphyletic. So that they wanted to say that you know, some humanity had emerged in Africa, and then we also had this Chinese population that also became human from Homo erectus in China. And there was a whole people there were scientists that held to this position until they get, you know, genetic tests on all of them on their population versus what they were able to find of, you know, pre-human remains and artifacts, and all of this traced back to the same origin as everybody else has been pointing to. And so the scientists were forced to admit that, yeah, we didn't evolve right here at home. We evolved in Africa and migrated here.
Yeah. I don't see any problem. I do want to say, just in case you're wondering, you are a controlled opposition Illuminati shill. And listen, I really want to bring this up.
Definitely the lowest paid member of the Illuminati.
That's what I was going to say. I didn't get my check last Friday. I was going to ask, is there something wrong? You know, I tried to call. They weren't picking up my phone. I wonder if they fired me. I'm not sure. Willow.
Well, you know, since the reptiles took over.
That's right. I forgot. That's what you're right. Willow Westbrook, thanks for the super chat. Aron, could you tell us a little bit about the lineage of hobbits?
I can't because we have insufficient evidence, it turns out, to make a definitive statement on them. I mean, we know that this group existed, but we have, with like one key example, we have remnants from a handful of them. So we know they were small people, but we only have like one crania. So it's really not enough to make a statement about the entire group.
Interesting. Thank you for the super chat and the question. Interesting question. Dragons of Genesis podcast, Jason Folks, he says, did mitochondria Eve bless the rains down in Africa?
I was in South Africa a year or two ago, and I remember we're driving across the desert, and I'm with a team of people at night. We're going down a dirt road there are kudu crossing the road. You have to, you know, watch yourself from running into kudu and springbok and that sort of thing. And as we're doing this road trip, that song comes on, and everybody's laughing because I mean, how often am I in Africa and then this stupid song comes on? Yeah. Anyway,
You're a heavy metal guy, though. I'm sure you're big into to hardcore heavy metal rock, right? I'm sure
I
you like
am.
other things. I'm just saying, what's your preferred?
Well, I don't listen to a lot of not metal.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to black metal, some death metal, classic heavy metal, of course, and the
AC/DC,
technically
obviously.
technically not metal, but it definitely in the same genre. It's like Motorhead isn't metal either, but they're so close.
Yeah, I just
They're rock and roll, but quite metallic, and AC/DC is rock and roll and quite blues, but they both blend very well with metal.
well, you've said before, and you literally sang the lyrics to the country song. Who was that? Was it Haggard?
Yep.
Yeah, you still had that memorized. Do you still remember the lyrics to that?
Yeah, but I'm not going to. You're not
Okay.
going to get
Anyway,
me
I
to
just
do.
didn't know if you've had that memorized. But anyway, I knew you did at the time when you did the presentation. You were once a believer. Did evolution have any impact in changing the way you went from someone who believed? I mean, what happened with you?
No, the evolution was completely irrelevant. I was never a creationist. I mean, what happened with me was that my family, predominantly Mormon, but they had this tradition that you don't proselytize until the child reaches the age of reason. Now, I don't know who came up with that idea, but it saved me, because by the time what was it, my 8th birthday? It was on my 8th birthday when my mom came in with a Bible and started telling me that this, now she can begin to tell me, how the Bible is the absolute truth and the Word of God. And my initial reaction to that was, no, it isn't. See what it says here? Because by the time I was 8, I had already seen cladograms in dinosaur books. I mean, one of my second grade teacher gave me a dinosaur book that included all this kind of stuff in it. And I could see how things were related. And of course it made sense. And I was just interested in animals and reptiles. I was always a nerd. So I never believed in creation. It would never have been possible for me to believe in creation.
Mm. Well, down the road, my best friend's uncle Bob, he was born with a skin condition. And I just wanted to show people this right here. Uncle Bob's hand, just there's a close up of Uncle Bob's hand for everybody who's in the chat right now. And I want you to look carefully at what's happened. He was born with this genetic deficiency in his skin. He's got pigmentation issues. Uncle Bob is actually an ape. Okay. And I want you to understand that when I saw this, the impact that even this picture had, recognizing this is the hand of a gorilla, a modern ape.
That's
And
what I was
look
going to say when I saw it. That looks like a gorilla's hand.
Yeah, I lied on purpose with the narrative. I did this yesterday with Michael Shermer, and I said, all you got to do is pitch it. It
Yep.
looks very human-like. Look at that.
Yep.
And yet we didn't come from a common ancestor. I mean, look at that hand, and it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling how much there is in similarity. And the creationist will say, well, no, we didn't come from a similar ancestor. God just made creation very similar. And it's like sprouted seeds, if you will, that just grew up to be their own kind at some distant time, 7,000 years ago in the past or whatever.
Yeah, God created all of these because he likes to send strong delusion. So he likes to send all this evidence to make us think one thing and then punish us forever in hell for thinking the things he made us thought.
Yeah. Yeah, you hold on. You got a book coming out. We just had someone, and I just remembered from watching the series yesterday. What is going to happen in that book?
That book, I put this thing on there. I was trying to get a scene from Throw Mama from the Train, where this character says it's a coffee table book, and it is. It's a coffee table book. It's on the verge of being a children's book. It's not. It's illustrated. It's not an in-depth genetic analysis or anything like that. It's basically like a children's book. So it's I don't want to talk down about my own book, but it's not it's not like an adult scientific analysis in depth. It really is something for passive reading in the doctor's office, that kind of thing.
But it's still fun. It's going to be a fun read for the lay audience.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It goes through like systematic classification of life. It just goes through a shorter list of things. You know, you are a chordate, blah, blah, here are the reasons why. And of course, there's images, there's drawings in each one. I didn't do the drawings. It was another artist that did those. And it was a publishing company in Spain that said, would you like to do this for us? Oh, yeah, sure. We'll do that.
Yeah, we got someone in the chat says, you might be an ape, but I'm not. What would you say to that?
Well, they don't know what an ape is, because an ape is any member of the taxonomic superfamily Hominoidea. And what identifies someone as an ape is the fingers you just showed with the fingernails, and more importantly, the fingerprints, because all apes have fingerprints, uniquely distinctive fingerprints. We also have these particular teeth. And if you want to know what kind of teeth an ape has, open your mouth real wide while looking in the mirror, because that's exactly diagnostic what your teeth are. The molar, it comes to 5 points separated by a Y-shaped crevice. These are distinctive characteristics that only apply to apes' teeth. And somebody will probably say, well, what about that guy that found a pig's tooth and thought it was badly worn? And so fossils, when they get exposed, they can be shaved down by erosion and such, and that's what he did. And by the way, he didn't fool the scientific community either. Everybody in the scientific community that saw this thing spoke against it. Not one person endorsed it, not one. Mm-hmm. They all said, you're full of shit, you need more evidence. In 5 years, he couldn't find it, and he was forced to print a retraction that he had given the wrong estimate.
Aron, I'm going to tell you what, man, that I love learning more about this stuff, finding out naturally how things came to be. I used to hate it. I used to be opposed to the idea completely. And what do you think? I mean, I can't really answer, but what do you think it is? Just the light switch goes off, and like, as an outsider who never had that problem, and you're looking at someone like me who you'd go, okay, this was one of the guys I'd call loony. He's just completely drinking the Kool-Aid and delusional, to where I'm at now. Like, what is your...
inoculated in my belief system, because I did what I see Christians doing, trying to justify the unquestionable authority of their scripture. But I did it earlier with something else. I was 8 years old, realized that there's no possibility of Santa Claus. Santa Claus makes absolutely no sense in the world, but my dad insisted that there is a Santa Claus, that he's real, and my dad wouldn't lie to me.
Right.
So I go for the absolute authority of my father. And I remember being 8 years old and trying to convince myself that Santa Claus is real. And that's what I see adults doing now, and telling me that that's what they're doing. They're trying to convince themselves that this is real.
But he is. No, now, let me ask you this before I let you go, because we could go on and on and on. And yeah. We didn't go into too much detail pertaining to evolution. I think I'd love to have you come back, because you spend, oh man, I mean, video after video after video after video. Half the words you use, I don't even know what they mean. It's complex when you get into science and trying to understand evolution, biology, etc. So my question would simply be, where do you see us heading in terms of evolution, and wanting to know, what do you think its impact is going to be on the religious world? Do you think at some point everyone's just going to have to accept this? And what do you think that's going to do with their text? Do you think they're just going to gymnastics their religion to fit the scientific data? And then here we have, don't you think at some point it's going to become obvious? Or do you think
they're going to retrofit their religion? It's like what they always do. And that's why, Behemoth was an elephant, and the unicorn was a rhinoceros, and Leviathan was a crocodile, until they discovered dinosaurs. And then they have to retrofit these things to try to find some way to squeeze dinosaurs into the Bible. And while they want to say that there's absolutely no evidence of evolution, and they want to say that the dinosaurs lived alongside man and that we don't have any transitional species, we in fact have so many of them, and keep acquiring more at such a volume, at such a rate, where now we understand that all of the dromaeosaurs, velociraptors, oviraptors, all of them, Deinonychus, every one of them, even tyrannosaurs, had feathers. So when
So the
all of
pictures are lies. All these pictures are BS, man.
yeah. Now, Tyrannosaurus didn't have feathers to the same degree that the others did, because I'm sure somebody in the chat will mention that. It's just like with elephants and rhinos. They look like they don't have any hair, but they have hair.
Right.
And Tyrannosaurs were much the same thing, especially when you talk about the babies. So the baby Tyrannosaurs had down, like Delong paradoxus was one that was a tyrannosaur. Not all of Tyrannosaurs are Tyrannosaurus rex. There's lots of different species, but one of them, Delong paradoxus, was a downy tyrannosaur from China. And then they found, I wish I could remember the names off the top of my head, but there's another one I think is Chinese that is a larger tyrannosaur, and it's covered in down. So even as an adult. So and some of these were like the velociraptors, Deinonychus and so forth, the dromaeosaurs, they had more what looked like flight feathers, regular actual feathers. And so when you see velociraptors, you don't see the naked monsters that you see in Jurassic Park. They would be virtually indistinguishable from birds until they open their mouth.
Oh, the sharp teeth. Look, couple super chats. Apostate Prophet has such a logical question here. If evolution is real, how does Aron explain gins? Hey, do you know AP? Do you know Apostate Prophet?
Okay. He had me moderate a debate with him and some pathological weirdo at one point. And yeah, I've done a couple of things with him. I like him.
Awesome. So yeah, how do you explain that though?
I love the way jinns are depicted in the Bible, or excuse me, not the Bible, in the Quran, where Solomon has all these extra stories that you don't get out of the Bible.
Right.
Like Solomon has the Dr. Dolittle ability to talk to animals, and he also has the ability to control the wind. So I could say that Solomon can make wind, but more importantly, he has genies working for him. So God assigned these genies to be the servants of Solomon. So he gets, instead of getting one genie with 3 wishes, he got a wish for 3 genies.
Smart man. No, you know, I'm looking into experts on Quranic studies, but also intertextuality, and I'm looking forward to. I would suspect that literature of Solomon, there's a tradition of him being a magician and whatnot, and I want to find the text that they're using. So you and me have got to definitely catch up and talk about some of the stuff we've been figuring out about Islam as well. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the super chat, AP. Cryptician says, does Aron think dark matter proves religion wrong?
I don't think. Well, we're not sure that there's dark matter. So I mean, I can't speak as I don't do physics at all. I'm not a physicist, nor trying to be. But what I understand is that the dark matter hypothesis explains some things, but may in fact not be the case. So I mean, I saw something, some story about just days ago about how some physicists are saying, well, maybe it's not dark matter, maybe it's something else. So.
God, no, I'm just it's always something, right? No.
Well, there was the story that I saw was talking about how the Big Bang wasn't necessarily the beginning of the universe, and I never thought the Big Bang was the beginning of the universe. But then I'm thinking that the universe is eternal in a different way than other people are, and when they want to say, well, the things wind down, and so you can't violate, you can't adhere to the first law of thermodynamics without violating the second one. Except that there's no point at which electrons get tired and slow down. That isn't going to happen. Your atomic bonds, your covalent bonds are going to stay. Those don't get weaker over time. So when they're talking about when they're talking about entropy, they're talking about something else than what I am, about whether matter can exist in an eternal state, especially when it changes states, as some physicists like Sean Carroll, for example, are arguing.
I'm jealous of you, by the way, for that interview you had with him. I wrote him sometime around the time I guess you might have, and he actually denied the interview because he does his own podcast. He's like, well, check back with me later. I'm too busy right now, and I just saw you. I was like, Aron has him on his show. Damn. No, but I love that guy.
What's funny about that is the guy doesn't really like me that much.
Really?
Yeah, but I've had him on twice. I met him in person, and respect the guy a whole lot. But I mean, it is clear that we're not like going to be tight buds or anything.
Right.
you get in the interview, and he's a little bit, above me.
Right.
Oh
He's
well.
above both of us in a way in the
Yeah.
thinking. So yeah, I do admire his thinking skills there. Stop Scamming Man on creationist arguing the DNA evidence for human chimp relationship is inadequate. They should dispute that DNA tests can prove people are siblings, relatives, or justify believing in a cutoff point.
Yeah. The problem is there's no part of that works for them, because nobody's going to argue like 23andMe and those kind of genetic tests that identify whether you're this percentage of a Western European or whatever. They understand that works. They accept that works, except when they logically continue and we all trace out Africa.
Mm.
And that's the problem, because they want the Garden of Eden to be in the Holy Land, and they don't want to say that they're descended from Africans, because they got that whole other issue with the color of their skin.
Damn. You haven't pulled any punches. Jinns are a subset of apes, just like us, just so everybody knows.
Jinns are supposedly made of fire. They are one of the many beliefs that people had that was based on their misunderstanding of what air is.
Interesting. Like ether or something.
No, they didn't know what air. They didn't know that air was particulate matter. They don't know why the clouds move. They don't know why the clouds appear out of nothing and disappear into nothing. They don't understand what dust devils are, or certainly tornadoes. Why volcanoes, the most godlike thing they've ever seen, spew all this smoke that columns up in the air. When you build a fire big enough in the desert, then it becomes a fire tornado. And all this, and then some things, when you like open a bottle of booze, if you get it in the right light, you might be able to see like the evaporation. There's some things you can see the distortion, whether it's from heat or from evaporation or whatever. So they equate all of these things with spirits, and they know that you will die if you can't breathe. So you have the breath of life. Okay, so they think that they can they can create a statue and breathe into it the breath of life, and then it will come alive. That's the golem spell, but that's also the story of Adam. And while Christians will say that Adam was not a golem spell, Jewish historians say, yeah, that's a golem spell. So that they've always believed that was a golem spell. And then Jews are the ones that wrote the damn thing. So yeah, that was a golem spell. So they didn't know what air is. That's it.
I find it interesting too that not only there were African traditions where a father would put his head to his son when he'd pass on, like kind of like, here, you're taking the mantle now, you're gonna rule the tribe, and he would breathe, and the son would inhale his breath, because they would have this kind of superstitious passing on the breath of life from the father to the son or something like that. Here, you have my power. And then isn't it interesting that Jesus does the same thing in this private room with his disciples in the New Testament? He breathes on them.
Also at the end, when one translation says that Jesus gave up the ghost, in another translation, he breathed his last. It's the same word. So it's the breath of life is spirit. So at some point we thought that wind, that air, breath was literally spirit. And then at some point, as we begin to figure out what air is, and now we've kind of segregated it in our minds. Now we think that the soul is something supernatural. But the idea that we have of the soul originally started out with wind.
Mm-hmm.
Only the Spirit of God moved over the surface of the waters. It's the wind.
Yeah, storm. It's a storm god. Stormed. There's a whole bunch here, but I got a question here from Woohoo, and I'm not sure you're gonna be able to answer this one. This one's tough. If we came from rocks, why are there still rocks?
Nobody believes we came from rocks.
Yeah, doesn't Kent say that though, to try to?
Still to this day, yes.
Interesting.
And he knows he's wrong. I've seen with me directly, he's tried to come up with whatever bullshit excuse to justify that. Well, maybe there's minerals in the earliest life. No, there isn't. The earliest life forms didn't have any minerals in them. So then he wants to say that we evolved on Earth and Earth was a ball of rock. No, it's a ball of rock and metal, but then it also has gases, and there are also things that are not called rock, like frozen water in ice is not called rock. So if you don't refer to ice as a rock, then not everything is a rock. And rock is solid by definition, and we, certainly in our formation, are liquid, and we still kind of are mostly liquid. So
yeah,
never rock, never came from rock.
Damn, I thought we'd get you on that one. Mr. Monster says, where do you see Earth in 3,000 years? A speculation of how far humanity can get based off of how fast we advanced in the last 3,000 years.
I can't see the future. I mean, I can only envision possible courses. We have to, if we're going to survive at all, then we have to come up with a fundamental grassroots cultural thing. What are you doing down there? Stop.
Is that the dog?
That's the dog, yeah. So he was scratching himself under my chair, so he's beating the chair with his claw.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to have, when people say things that when you say that you know things you don't know, when you make up statistics off the top of your head, when you say baseless speculation as if it's a matter of fact, these are all lies, and we should be outraged when people lie. But religious culture has conditioned us to appreciate that and to reveal those, or to describe those lies as revealed truth. And so that just means that people make up all kinds of crazy shit, so that Tom Hanks drinks raped baby's blood while he worships the devil, and he's a reptile from outer space. People just make up whatever they want. It doesn't matter. We need to have a cultural change where when somebody says something that isn't true, they get reprimanded for that, where the culture wants people to be truthful and honest. That's the only thing that's going to save us.
Unless they want to be like the Lion Club. Come join us at the Bullshitters Club. I mean, technically, if you're going to be someone in power who's trying to change things, obviously something that's going to be detrimental to human existence, that's something we need to really pay close attention to. If you want to go,
just ignore it and say that anthropogenic climate change isn't a thing.
And then go extinct.
There is no climate change, and if there is, it's something else that would have happened naturally anyway. And if there's something we could do about it, we shouldn't, because it's all natural. And so we should just not be responsible for any damn thing and let whatever is going to happen, and just believe in our fairy tales and lie about them and until we die. Yeah,
because the end is soon. We're in the last days, don't you know? Anyway, Mr. Monster, thank you so much. I'm BSing there. Mr. Davis, I hope I'm saying that right. He says, how about Homo bodensis just found?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read up about that yet. It's supposed to be a more direct human ancestor than Homo erectus. Now, for the longest time, they said that Homo erectus was so widely dispersed across all of the ranges from where we originated, that it was safe to say, because scientists don't say that this species evolved from that species, at least not paleontology. In genetics you can say that, but in paleontology you can't. There's always a possibility that something else exists that is closer. But with Homo erectus, they said that they're so widely dispersed and there's such a wide range for such a long time that it's safe to say that we evolved from that one. And now they've come up with this other one that they say is going to be an intermediate. And I suspect that it evolved from Homo erectus. And so it's like what it used to be was Homo erectus was the father of Homo heidelbergensis, and then heidelbergensis begat both Neanderthalensis and sapiens. And I don't know yet where Homo bodensis fits in.
Thank you for
that.
I
also don't see the purpose of putting in quite so many distinctions. There's a number of paleoanthropologists that say that these are just different races of humans, and we shouldn't be giving them different species names.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when I say race, of course, I'm not talking about like what we currently culturally call race. I'm talking about back when there actually were multiple races of people, because what we have now is all, despite all the diversity that you might see from superficial surface features, it's all one race. But a couple 100,000, quarter million years ago, there were actual different races of people.
Wow. Well put. Jojo Freelancer made me some fan art. Would you be interested in him making you some?
I'm not paying for any.
No.
You're talking about.
Yeah, just fan art, someone who appreciates what you do?
Yeah, I appreciate art.
Awesome. So definitely, you can message me and I'll link you up with him, Jojo, so you can get him some art. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say before we let you go? I mean, we have like 430 something people, approximately 430 to 450 people hanging out right now. We're talking about evolution. We've gone all over the place, though. Is there anything in particular you'd like to say about evolution or whatever before we go?
I don't see the problem that people have in coming from humble beginnings. Every success story brags about how they started from poverty, how they started against all adversity, and so forth. So, what is the problem of having emerged from from apes, or from why is that a big deal? So we've ascended to this position. We can't be proud of that. And the other thing is that a lot of people look at the Buddhist idea of wanting to be one with everything. Well, in evolution, granted, we are part of this biosphere. We are inextricable from it. We certainly have a belonging in a place, and we are one with everything in this sense. So I don't understand what the animosity is, but then I don't understand what the appeal for religion is either. I mean, everything that they want to sell me for Christianity, and especially Islam, the things that they look forward to, the things that they find appealing, I find absolutely abhorrent, and indefensibly so. So, just a matter of perspective, I guess.
I totally get it. And we got a few ex-Muslims in the chat, by the way. I just commented the podcast, mythvisionpodcast.com/Bart, letting everybody know they can go sign up. If you don't want to sign up, listen, this is the kind of host I am, Aron. If you don't want to sign up through me and you just love Aron and you want to sign up, I don't care. At the end of the day, go to Aron. How do they sign up through your link, Aron?
I put it on Facebook. I put it on Twitter, and I put it on the video interview that I did with Bart.
Okay. Well, this is what it looks like. You can go sign up on the 7th of November at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be hanging out with Dr. Bart Ehrman, and we're going to be talking about what Jesus thought about himself. So I think a lot of people will enjoy that, and that'll be fun hanging out with him. Also, Aron Ra's YouTube channel. Go check this guy's stuff out. I mean, the lies in the textbook series is unbelievable. It never ends. It's like, it literally is like a Netflix show to me. Like I could sit and actually watch it one show after another. And I got to admit, Kent, he's got an interesting voice, which makes it fun to listen to him talk, but he's so full of shit. Like he is so full of it. And I used to believe that. Everything he said, man, I used to believe it. He was defending the Bible, The
thing I liked about doing the series on Kent was the same thing when I did another series on disproving the irrefutable proof of God. There was another cult leader in that one, and with Kent and this other cult leader, they both had very distinct, very weird, very irritating type of speech, and they were very authoritarian, and they dripping with vitriol and superiority and narcissism, and they were both just such disgusting people that I come out looking like the good guy just by letting them speak for a minute before I interject. People already hate them, and then I come in. And it's funny that when you can be more of a villain just presenting your own case, especially compared to a guy with a Fu Manchu.
A Fu Manchu who has been said to be a satanic worshiper and who eats hot food hotter than your hell. I mean, I've seen the videos. Trust me. I'm like, how the hell does he do that? You're like tearing up at the end of some of these, so I know it's bad, especially when you don't.
The worst one I've had so far is when they say when you eat it so hot it burns twice.
Yeah.
Well, I've had it burn thrice, where it comes out in your urine.
Oh my gosh.
And worse, I've also had it come out in sweat.
No, you're literally dropping blood sweats like Jesus in the garden.
When you get enough concentration of Carolina Reaper and the really, really high up in there, then it actually comes out in your sweat. So
the worst I've had
burning through your skin.
Oh my gosh, I can't do it. The worst I have is I'm going to the bathroom and I'm on the bathroom for a while. That's the worst I get. But you're probably like, you're at stage 1. I'm at 20 now. That's the worst for me. I can't
Well, I
do
don't
it.
know how much further I can go because I mean I've had a couple of existential crises where it affects your breathing and you're like, okay, am I going to make it?
Really?
Yeah, I've been a couple of times.
You better chill out, bro. That's over the top. Hey, one day I'd like to come see you in person and do some interviews in person. I know you've been part of some documentaries. You were part of the Marketing the Messiah documentary, I believe. Many other documentaries you've been a part of, but I'd like to come travel sometime. And if you're having to think, that's how many documentaries. That's a problem if you have to think about what you've been part of. I've watched them, so I've seen it, but I do the in-person stuff with scholars all the time, and
Isn't
it'd
that
be a
great
privilege.
that you and I get to do this? I was talking with a Hollywood actress, some beautiful little 20 something. I'm doing an interview with her because she just came out with a book. You know, I'm promoting the book, and she says she wants to start her own podcast. And I say, well, um, I spend my time interviewing the greatest minds in the world.
Yep.
There are certainly worse ways to spend your time.
We are very privileged to do that. And I feel I'm in a special spot where I can leverage like the Patreon fans who have questions. And this, I'm throwing this idea out to you, like, cause I know you're already busy, but you're doing it full time now. This is what I do. If they have questions, I'll record their question using my camera gear and ask these brilliant minds the question directly from someone who was able to just help contribute a little on the Patreon. And they have made history with their name being asked of someone who isn't going to be here, this small time in the sunlight. Down the road, they're going to be able to have their children's children look back and go, my grandfather asked that question, or my grandmother, or whatever, you know, like they asked that question of this mind in the, 21st century. And we made history. So we
Yeah,
got to do that.
somebody out there was at the Ken Ham and Bill Nye Science Guy debate and asked that question: what would it take to change your mind? That was such a big deal, but that was just somebody in the audience.
What would it take? He was asking Bill Nye.
No, they were asking both of them. The
Okay.
question both of you, what would it? But it's just what you were talking about. That was somebody's question that just came out of the audience. That was their moment, and somebody asked that particular question, which was really more than anything else in the entire debate. That decided the debate right there.
Wow. And I suspect that the Bill Nye had a much better
Bill
answer.
Nye went into different types of evidence that any of these different categories that he would need to see. But ultimately the answer came down to evidence. What would change your mind? Evidence. And Ken Ham said nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever change his mind. And Answers in Genesis and a number of other creationist organizations have posted written statements of faith wherein they admit, in different ways, they phrase it differently, that no amount of proof will ever change their minds.
Yeah.
So they don't care what the truth is. They want to believe what they want to believe. And they're going to believe what they want to believe. And people have admitted to me they're going to believe what they want to believe, even when they know it's not true. They're going to believe it anyway.
See, that I didn't do. I didn't do that. I was really, I mean, obviously, look at where I'm at now, but I really believed it was right. And the way I like to explain this psychologically is I had experience. Remember, I told you I grew up in a traumatic type of household with alcoholism. It was
Yeah.
very verbally and once in a while physically abusive. My father was a Green Beret in the Special Forces. He was like a close quarter combat trainer, very strong physical man. Guns in the house go off all the time when you get blackout drunk. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. And Jesus being my best friend and asking him in my heart after walking down to that altar when I was like 12 years old and everyone in there was clapping and thanking God that I got saved, I felt an experience, which we feel when you inject yourself with heroin, or if you pop a few Percocets, or if you do a little methamphetamine or an upper, or if you take an Adderall, you get experiences, and you can do it just without drugs. Your brain have these chemicals already. But the point is, I attached that experience to a dogma, I like to kind of refer to it like the cloud, to a thought. When you attach it to a thought, it becomes concrete in your mind. How do you separate that experience from this is not factual is the difficult part. Yeah. How do we attach that experience to factual data and become intrigued and in love and have experience from the natural processes, things we can actually know and prove with good methodology instead of it being superstitious? That is what I have learned to do, and it's taken years. So I can't imagine people who've been in dogma far worse, or are willing to admit, even if it is wrong, just so they have you shut up. That's really why they're probably saying it. Even if it is wrong, and they don't believe it is, but even if it is, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them know it's wrong. I don't know. But
one of my best friends told me that I'm a Christian because I like to believe that, not because I think it's true.
I know one guy who said I'm not going to mention his name on the show because I don't want to possibly get out, but he said he's a Christian just because he likes Christianity. That's it. It's not because it's factually true. He even admitted that Jesus failed to come back when he said he was going to come back. Yeah. I'm like, how can God in the flesh get that wrong? You know, that's, I mean, and I know it's not, I know it's failed. It's obvious, but he admitted it and still believed in the tradition. He believed in that stuff. And I said, so it's not about like, I have to be right. He's like, Derek, I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm sorry you come from that background, but I'm okay with just practicing Christianity, not because I ontologically want to die on that hill. And I just said, kudos to you, man. I couldn't do it. I'm not going to practice something I just know not only has mostly negative psychological implications for a lot of people in the world, but is blatantly provable to be false and not, you know, there's good reasons to not believe it. So
it's a lot harder to argue with a non-creationist Christian, you know, because when you have the fundamentalist, it's like you knock out anything and the whole house of cards comes down. But with the other Christians, they're like, well, you know, I accept science. I just believe that there's a God behind it. So the God is unassailable. There's not a place where you can attack that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Not even on the point that well, you believe something completely that isn't indicated by anything. And then you have to get into philosophy and fallacies to understand why you even hold this position, which is what I said about making a cultural distinction about when people say things when they say they know things that they don't know, people should react negatively to that. You know, right. You don't know that. There's no way you could know that. So you need to rephrase that question. Maybe you like to believe that, but you don't know that. You can rephrase that so it's still an honest statement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Monster in Head. Hey, thanks to both of you. That was a fun talk. Fire Sabers, keep up the good work. Couple more here. People are slamming us. Alan Bird, my friend, says sexy, binary, or non-binary. Where does Aron come down in the issue? Sex. I'm like, sexy? Who's sexy? No, sex, binary or non-binary. Where does Aron come down in the issue? And I guess it's a controversial issue, but
I don't think so. I mean, I feel kind of strange that I am just straight up hetero. Right. And maybe that was supposedly normal, you know, when I was a kid, but it's not normal now. And I just think everybody else seems to be more versatile than me. And and that's fine.
Yeah.
And when I like the, I don't know how far I can get into this answer. I mean, there was a time when you notice when you on YouTube, there'd be like the sidebar videos. They always offer you these other things. Well, a few years ago, before YouTube changed some of their rules, you know, you just randomly click on whatever you find interesting in the sidebar, and then click on the next sidebar. You click whatever's interesting. And I noticed that it was always only 6 clicks before I end up with girls making out.
It knew what you liked. That's what it is. The internet knew what you liked. They've been doing this for a long time. That's great. Yeah. Hey, I guess everybody to each their own, you know, and I think we are living in a time where we're able to have those freedoms. I mean, you had to hide these things or be put to death getting caught doing some of this stuff in history in a lot of cases, especially under fundamentalist movements or Christianity and such, you know, a lot of this stuff.
The rule should be so simple, you know, consenting adults.
Yeah.
We're done, right?
let's make it easy. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. And I think that's, I don't know, it's common sense today, I guess. But William Aron's final one, ladies and gentlemen. What do you feel about Christian denominations that allow their members to accept the theory of evolution while having either an allegorical or literal belief in God and the story of Adam and Eve?
Well, I don't know how they justify Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve is a metaphor. And you're perfectly fine if you're reading that fable as a fable. There's no historicity to it, none whatsoever. But I know Christians who accept that, who know that there's no historicity, and they accept it anyway. Now, there will be others who will argue the theology of what does that mean with the original sin and what is the purpose of Christianity, and those Christians don't have a problem with that. So it's not really my issue either. I'm only talking. The reason I argue about creationism more than theology is because I'm arguing against people who are making factually false statements. I don't care about philosophy so much because you can't prove those kind of arguments right or wrong.
Right.
But I can prove with creationism that's a false statement. This is the truth. We can prove both. And so. And that's where you get to see whether people are lying, whether they're going to admit that they made a mistake. And of course, when does a creationist ever say, you know what, I got that wrong. I have to admit that there are transitional species, or I have to admit that we actually technically are apes. No, that's not going to happen because they believe in a lie.
This is why you can understand why the drug addiction kind of took my mind off of being super religious while I'm in active addiction. I mean, I'm not going to church. I'm doing bad things. I'm trying to keep my habit of addiction up. That actually helped me. I actually think the struggle of addiction to sucking me out of, because if I was doing good and I was on the straight and narrow, as they call it, and I'm doing the right thing, I thought I was right about everything. The ego of attaching that experience to the BS in my head, it was being able to go through a traumatizing experience due to the drug addiction that allowed me to shift and pull back and say, I don't know Jack. And I was actually able to kind of teach myself and learn. You're right. A creationist who's actively a creationist, I've never seen them while actively believing in this just flop based on evidence. It's usually the idea that, well, if you can give me evidence is proof. I've never seen that. I'm not gonna say it's not possible. It's most likely an underlying issue of some type of psychological or experience-based reasoning behind why they are what they are. That's just my opinion.
If the Bible said that 2 + 2 = 5,
or Jonah swallowed a whale. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Our friend Alan said he didn't mean sex attraction. I think he said, hold on, I'm sorry. I wanted to get the answer correct here for him as we leave. Sorry, Alan, I'm looking for your super chat here, or not your super chat, but the comment you had. Okay. Sorry, I'm scrolling up. Please bear with me, Aron.
Yeah, I got dogs getting upset. I'm going to have to go do something.
I mean biological sex, not sexual attraction. So.
Well, I'm hardly the person to ask about that. Because as I said, I think it's strange that I am so binary in a world that is increasingly or decreasingly so. And I'm sorry, the dog's going nuts. I'm going to have to go.
You're good. You're good. Tell the dog I love him. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'll stay in touch with you. I'll message you. We'll plan something in the future on the Quran.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
Good night.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun. Aron Ra coming hanging out. His dogs allowed us that much time, so I'm not going to argue with the dog. The dog is always right. So is the wife. So eventually I've got to get out of here before I lose that battle. I hope that answered your question there, Alan. Thank you so much, though, for the question. I hope he answered it. He's pretty much saying he's binary, and he's not against people who think in other ways, but he's just kind of used to that, I guess, if that makes sense. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun with Aron. We kind of went wherever you guys wanted to steer the discussion as well, and we touched on some of the stuff, evolution. It's so interesting finding out about the reality of how things really are versus the myths that we've been told all along. I'm really falling in love more and more with learning about what really is. Sure, the world isn't always a beautiful place, and the things that we experience and how we've come to be where we are, yeah, there's a lot of death, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of struggle, but it's almost like if we knew what we know now and wrote those into narratives, that would be a story worth reading and understanding, which we are starting to. I just think that the myths, we're starting to debunk the myths and look into the science and start to understand like who we really are. I think that'll get rid of the whole tribalism in some sense. We can start realizing we're on the same playing field. Doesn't matter race, doesn't matter where you come from, all of those things. That's the goals, to become more of a humanitarian and look at other people and say, hey, I love you no matter what. I don't care where you come from. We got a lot of work to do, though. A lot of work to do. Lots of things come to mind while Aron's talking about how we view people, even with your question, Alan, about sex and how we view these things. My family, my father was raised in the special forces, and so you look down on people who are homosexual or they're of a different orientation. You know, it's fun to make fun of them and act like that's not cool. My dad used to, make those comments growing up, or say things like smoking pots for losers, these type of things. And I ended up doing the very things he told me never to do. He was drunk and I'd be growing up and he'd hiccup and tell me this, son, you want to live forever? Let me tell you, always wear a condom, never swim alone, never give a dog a chicken bone, always go to combat with a plan, and never use your tongue to stop a fan. If you can do those things, you'll live forever. I think I've actually done all of the things he said not to do, just about, literally. So I probably won't live forever. It's just probably not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. Dad told me what I needed to not do, and I'd live forever. And I messed it up. It's like saying, see that tree over there? Do not eat that wonderful, glowing, beautiful tree's fruit. If you do, you're going to die. Okay. Let me see. That tree looks pretty good, actually. Why doesn't he want me to eat that tree? Dude, what the heck's wrong with it? Let me try it. Anyway, everyone who's stuck around, thanks so much for hanging out. I'm not going to go on and on. The wife will wonder where I'm at soon enough. John Lennon on us. And Cryptician, thank you so much. Scholar Vid, everybody. Always wear a condom. Never swim alone. Never give a dog a chicken bone. Always go to combat with a plan. And never use your tongue to stop a fan. Amen and hallelujah. I love you guys. Nope, my father's still alive. But he used to tell me that stuff when he was drunk growing up, So he's sober now, and he's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast in the United States. But anyway, love you. I'm going to let you guys see the gods. Come check out MythVision. One more time, I might as well plug it. You guys go subscribe to Aron Ra. He's got all the stuff. You can't miss it. There's his name. Type that in YouTube or go down in the description. Here is the sign up for the webinar. I'll see you on the 7th. If you haven't signed up, here is the sign up once again. Oop, that's not the sign up. Let me type it out here. MythVisionPodcast.com/Bart. You guys can join us. We're going to be live. I don't know. Bart might actually have tomorrow. I have to go to Bart Ehrman's house and help him install some stuff to get his equipment hooked up so he can start doing stuff online. So I'll be hanging out with Bart for like 2 or 3 hours tomorrow, Dr. Ehrman. And on the 7th, he might need me to come back out. So you might see me somewhere, somehow pop up on the screen with him. I'm not really sure. We'll see. But sign up if you want to join us. We're going to talk about what Jesus would have actually thought about himself, and like what Christians did with it isn't what he actually thought. And then also Aron Ra's Patreon and MythVision's Patreon. You can join us out, get your questions asked, and hundreds of videos. I've been doing polls and stuff, trying to find out what you guys like to see and stuff. So love you. Let's check out what the gods have to say. And, let's keep learning. Let's keep growing. Let's keep educating the general audience, breaking down these mythologies that separate us. If you don't believe like me, you're cooking in my God's broth, my chicken noodle soup one day. And, you're not on the same level as me. It may not be a race thing, but it's an ideological thing, which still they think they're superior in some sense, or they have something that you don't have and you need. And we're all human. No, get out of my face with that. If you don't believe me, talk to the gods.